Sounds good. I will go ahead and get set up.
All right, it's all you, Corrie.
Great. Hi, everyone. Happy to be with you again today. Let me go ahead and set up my little screen here, and then we'll get going. All right, Rose, can you give me a thumbs up? Do you see the presentation screen? Okay, great. Okay. Hi again, everyone. As Rose mentioned, my name is Corrie Hawes, and I got to talk with you last week about resumes. And this week, I'm so excited to talk about informational interviews. This was one of those things that I knew nothing about as an undergrad student. I didn't learn about informational interviews till I was in grad school. And I had an assignment, probably similar to you, to conduct an informational interview. And so once I did it, I was just so excited because I learned so much so fast about exactly what I wanted to know. And I'll share more with you on that. But I'm so excited to talk with you about how to prepare for an informational interview, conduct one, and also the follow-up steps that come along with informational interviews. So let's go ahead and jump in. If you have any questions that come up during the presentation, go ahead and write them down. We'll have time at the end to discuss those. And I highlighted 3 different things in this presentation that would be great for you to write down, just really helpful resources, especially pertaining to your assignment in particular, I think. So have your pencils ready or your keyboard ready wherever you're taking notes. And I'm coming to you today from the Career Development and Experiential Learning Center. And I think you already know our heart. It's really to just support you and walk alongside you in your career and your professional goals. And if you have any questions along the way when it comes to anything related to career, we want to help support you. I think especially I'm passionate about helping out with exploration. So if you're feeling really confused about where you need to go and how to explore, I know our whole team would be happy to support you in this way to figure out, just like our mission statement says, how your strengths, knowledge, skills, and abilities can really align to help pursue this. So we also offer all of our appointments online right now, so just don't hesitate to reach out if you need any support. Here's our resources. Now let's go ahead and jump into the actual topic that we're going to be discussing today. The objective of our presentation, it's to discuss what an informational interview actually is. So you're going to learn what it is, and when it comes to an informational interview, who you should ask for an informational interview. We're also going to discuss how you can write the actual request for an informational interview. And we're going to discuss a lot of the timeline aspects. So before the interview, how you can prepare, how to actually run the interview and take the lead position when it comes to the actual conducting part. And then we're going to discuss afterwards how you can follow up. And finally, we're going to give an example of what an example email or, let's say, LinkedIn message would look like to follow up after your informational interview. So what is an informational interview? Here is a longer definition, but it is a job search process that typically comes from successful networking opportunities, which help you find out specific information about a particular industry or role. You can think of this as the field that your major is going to take you in, and you're wondering more about that. So a particular industry or role you're interested in from someone who's already established in the field. So I like to think of it as a professional conversation with someone. It can be someone that you want to know more about in a professional setting. Another shorter definition is gathering information about a specific occupation or industry just by talking with someone who's actually working in the field. Now, I mentioned I did an informational interview for the first time in grad school, so probably about 4 years ago. And it was I think it was my first assignment in grad school. And I was in school for higher education or college counseling. And one thing that's neat about college counseling is that there's different functional areas. So I work in the functional area of career counseling, but there's also things like student activities or admissions, et cetera, all these support services that you probably know about as a student. I wasn't exactly sure if I wanted to stay in the career field or if I wanted to think of exploring other functional areas. So I was really curious about student activities. So for my informational interview, I was able to get in touch with someone at a different university who was the director of student activities. And I got to talk with her about her role. She shared some of the things she loved, some of the things she didn't really love. She shared about her university, and I got to learn, is that an university I would want to work in? Is this the field I would want to work in? And within about 1 hour during our informational interview, I quickly learned I preferred career over student activities. And so think of it as a really expedited way to learn so much about an industry or an employer. Really anything that you're wondering about, you can learn very quickly. So it's just a professional conversation of learning, really. I'll expand on that a little bit more. So what is an informational interview? What it is and what it is not. It is a way to tap into hidden jobs. So in the middle of these conversations, or let's say a conversation that you're having during an informational interview, you might learn from this individual that they are about to hire for a position. So maybe it's a position that hasn't been posted yet on their university website. So it's an anticipated opening. So things like that, these hidden jobs, can be found in the middle of doing an informational interview. So really, it's an underutilized search strategy. It's an underutilized networking strategy. Like I said, if I would have known about this as an undergrad student, I probably would have done more informational interviews in college. I think college is the perfect time to be engaging in informational interviews because employers know that, or just professionals know that they felt the same way that you did when they were in college. It's a time of exploring, it's a time of figuring out not only your major, but what you want to do with that major, what career path you want to enter into. And so I have found people are extremely supportive and understanding of providing their time to help you in this exploration. So it really is an underutilized tool that not many people know about when it comes to job search and job exploration. It's also a way to just explore, explore, explore. You can really, I mean, honestly, you can be majoring in one thing and maybe just have some, like, I don't know, yearning to really know more about a completely different major. There's just something that you're curious about, wondering about the field. What an amazing way to jump into an informational interview and just explore what someone's experience is like. Maybe someone has worked in this field that you're curious about for 10 years, and you're going to know so much by the end of that interview through just exploring and kind of putting yourself in their shoes. What would it look like for you, maybe 10 years down the road, if you decided to go that route? So it's a fun way to explore. What it is not. It's not a job interview. So I just say take that pressure off right away. You're not applying for a job, you're not interviewing for a job. The professional that you're going to be working with, they're not going to be doing a full on interview with you. So I would say just take that pressure off. But it is kind of neat to think about if it goes well, there could be a connection for the future. But I'd say don't go into it with that pressure hanging on you. It's not an open-ended amount of time. I think this is one way you can demonstrate your professionalism by really managing your time extremely well. Because let's say they do have a job opening coming up, and you say, I want to have an informational interview that's 45 minutes. Let's say you set the tone and you define that, and then you meet with the person and you go an hour and a half. That does not look professional on your side. You're using up a lot of their time, probably their work time. And so it's not super open-ended. You really want to define the time and stick to your time. If you say 15 minutes, keep it to 15 minutes. And finally, it is not a job commitment or it's not a commitment into that field. It's just think of it as a way to learn more. You don't have to commit to anything. It's really just kind of my last note in this is I want to just share, it's a way to really explore. It gives you the chance to ask the questions that you're curious about. You can ask about the person's role. You can ask about their company. You can ask about the industry. Think of it as a way to test the waters before jumping in with both feet. So let's go ahead and move on to who should you ask? So one of the typical ways that you can ask someone for an informational interview is to contact someone you already know. This is a really common way to quote unquote network. This is a really common way to make these connections. And even with a few degrees of separation, it never hurts to ask family and friends if they know anyone who could help. So if you hear your cousin talking about someone who's in the field, let's say they're a history teacher and you're wondering about what would that look like to actually teach history, then it's okay to ask, hey, can I have that person's contact information? So those degrees of separations are really connection points for you to think of talking to someone that you might already know or have a connection with. Another way is to send a cold outreach email or a message on LinkedIn. Now, cold outreach, it can be a little bit intimidating, but I want to just encourage you, it's really becoming more and more common, especially in this digital age that we're living in. When it comes to LinkedIn, which I'm sure you've heard of it, if you don't know what LinkedIn is, feel free to reach out and we can set you up with LinkedIn. But LinkedIn is really just a professional social network. And it's really, if you can write your message professionally, and I'll teach you how to do that. If you do that correctly, this cold outreach it doesn't need to feel intimidating. Reaching out to send a message on LinkedIn can be really effective, especially for something like this. So when it comes to actually writing that request for an informational interview, you want it to be a clear message about why you're reaching out and an easy to understand request. So clear and easy for this person to understand. I like to say concise as well. You want to keep it fairly short. The most important aspects are these things, and then let's go ahead and review a few other aspects to this actual request that you're going to write. You're going to want to ask for help. So you can phrase it like that. I'd love your help with blank. I hope you're able to help me with blank. So let's say I'd love your help with learning more. For me, it was learning more about social activities or student activities in college. What is that like for you? I'd love your help with just learning more. You can be clear and concise, be really specific, and make it just really easy for this person to just say yes. So kind of set it up for them to be able to say yes or no. Make it very clear. You could say, I'd love to take you out to coffee over Zoom to learn about how you got your start in marketing and what it's like to work at your company. I'm actually going to be in the area. This is pre-COVID, but you would say something like, I'm actually going to be in the area next week and would be happy to meet whenever is most convenient for you. How amazing that right now you don't even need to be in the area. You can set up a Zoom conversation pretty instantly. So just make it really easy. You want to provide a hook. So demonstrate why you really want to meet. Maybe you admire their specific career path, or you see similarities between your education and theirs. Perhaps you just have a shared connection. So your cousin that I was talking about is your shared connection. Whatever it is, be sure to mention that because people love those connection points. Be extremely considerate. We mentioned this earlier. This person is putting their job on hold to chat with you. So acknowledge how busy they must be. So you can say that in the email. I know you're really busy, but even 15 minutes would be appreciated, right? So I think 15 minutes is pretty short, but I would say whatever time frame you decide on and they decide on, just make sure to stick with that. And make don't make it seem like you're looking for a job. So just make it clear that you want to talk with them about their perspective on their job and industry experience. And let's say down the road, if a job opened up because of this, then think of that as a bonus. But once again, take that pressure off and don't really infuse that into the email. Think of it more as just an invitation for a conversation. Now, when it comes to the actual informational interview, here's what we can tackle for your preparation before the informational interview. It's pretty simple. You're just going to prepare a list of questions ahead of time, and you're going to organize those questions. So the list of questions should be related to the field or their role or the particular company or employer that they're working for. So don't expect the person you're meeting with to lead the conversation. Take initiative to show your professionalism to lead with having prepared questions ahead of time. It really makes the time more enjoyable because they can kind of just relax into the conversation and then they don't have the pressure of coming up with questions. You've already done that work for them. It's your job to figure out exactly what you want to ask. So really think about what are you curious about and ask those questions. Even things that just things that might not be typical that are you're kind of wondering in your mind, feel free to ask them. And then just organize your questions. Instead of a long laundry list of questions, sort them by category. So sort them by industry, company culture, maybe their role and what it involves, or some questions like, what is your work-life balance like? Are you able to have a balance between your professionalism and your personal life? I think an informational interview is such a great time to ask about that work-life balance. So once questions, I would say definitely prioritize them for the ones that you're most curious about. Make sure those are at the top of your list. In case you run out of time, you've addressed the most important ones that you're wondering about. And as you can see, I've highlighted this long link below, but at this link, we have an ultimate guide for informational interviewing that will have lots of questions. So we're going to dive into more of the specific questions you can ask, but write down this link if you want even more inspiration on your questions to ask. Now let's jump into during the actual interview. When it comes to the actual informational interview, you want to go ahead and be the one that breaks the ice. People generally enjoy talking about themselves, so just start by asking about their personal experiences in the field thus far. So you can have your questions ready to go. Things like, how did you get your start in this field? What's it like working at your company? What projects are you currently working on? What's your opinion on? And then you can insert a recent development in the industry. Personally, this is one of my favorite questions because it shows that you've taken time to research something that recently developed in the industry. So if you come to this informational interview and you can say, hey, recently I saw on the news that this is impacting, let's say, pharmaceutical sales, right? You're interviewing someone in pharmaceutical sales. And I saw recently that there's this law that is limiting the way that you do your work. Something like that is such a great way to show that you've done your research, you're a professional, you put some thought into this ahead of time. So that's a great way to link these, to really just start the conversation. Also make a positive impression. You should also be prepared to talk about yourself and your long-term career goals. So I don't know if you guys have discussed it yet in your class, but I don't know if you've heard of an elevator pitch, but an elevator pitch is basically a 1-minute synopsis of who you are and what your long-term career goals are. If you need any help preparing that, we would love to support you in that. Think of it as just a way to be able to communicate what you care about and what your career goals are. Even if you're not sure exactly of what your career path would be, I know you could even share even just some interests that you have in general, which would be really great in a scenario like this. Also, during the informational interview, you want to get the career advice that you actually came for. This is the time to get that insider info, the inside scoop in this one-on-one conversation. If you're in the initial exploratory phases of an informational interview, you want to go ahead and ask these types of questions. How did you come to choose this company over others? What is the most rewarding or challenging thing about working in the industry? How can I best leverage my experience in this field? Now, let's say that the person that you're going to be interviewing is in the field that or industry that you definitely want to go into. And let's say you're about to head into an interview potentially for this industry. Being able to do an informational interview in the field, they can give you some really good tips to really nail your interview. So you could ask things like, how would you prepare for an interview in this field? And they'll tell you exactly how to prepare. What experiences or skills does your company look for in new hires? What job search advice would you give to someone in my situation? This person has already been through the interviews, the interview for this industry. So they're going to be the expert. So definitely pick their brain to figure out how you can prepare for the nuances in the industry that you're interviewing for. Now, you also, and finally, you want to extend your network. As the meeting ends, ask for recommendations for a few more people you could talk to about your job, about the job or industry. So the likelihood of someone agreeing to chat with you increases if there's already a mutual connection. So this person could be your connection to more people. Be specific and try something like, could you recommend a few people for me to speak with about transitioning into a marketing career? And they might give you a few names, and then you can learn even more. Now, after the informational interview, it's really important that you follow up in a professional way. Just like if you were actually doing a job interview, you want to follow up with a thank you email or a thank you card. Informational interviews are no different, especially because this could potentially open up a future job for you. So don't skip the final step of following up. You want to send a handwritten thank you note or an email. Or if you made this connection over LinkedIn, you can even send a LinkedIn message. However, if you have the person's actual work email, I would recommend sending it via email rather than LinkedIn. I feel like it can have more of a personal touch. Now, I'll go ahead and read this email example. And this is one that is extremely, extremely specific. So even this, you don't even have to go this far, but it's amazing to see the example of a student who goes really, really specific in helping out and supporting an organization. So the student says, hi to this person. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today. I enjoyed talking with you about your experience in, let's say, marketing, and certainly learned a lot about what you shared. I appreciate all the insights you provided and descriptions of the challenges you're facing. You mentioned that your team at XYZ company is looking to ramp up your content marketing efforts. I'd love to help your team strategize and contribute toward increasing your blog traffic. I've attached a PDF with ideas I have for your company strategy, including, and then you can have your list of ideas here, which could include keyword suggestions, other strategies for boosting SEO, etc. Take a look, and if you're interested, I'd love to get a call on with you anytime next week and discuss how I can help. Best regards. Now, this person went above and beyond, right? They strategized and dreamed up ideas even after the informational interview. But even if you just did the first, let's say, 2 paragraphs of this email, that would be amazing, right? If you're saying, hey, this is what you mentioned in the meeting, I was listening. It's really you demonstrating that you listened to what they shared. And I'd love to talk to you more about that. I mean, it just goes so far in our world today to send a note afterwards. So some tips for this email, you want to mention something specific that was memorable that you truly learned about them, which this student did. Thank them again for taking time to meet with you. They're so busy and they set aside their work time to meet with you. So thank them again. If they asked for your resume, you can attach an updated version. And so one thing that I would recommend if you are planning to do an informational interview or you've just done one, it would be great to make sure that your resume is up to date just in case they ask for that. And so don't hesitate to book an appointment to make sure that resume is ready to go. And then think of this email as providing a path to just move the relationship forward. You're really starting the conversation and really closing it up well, but you're leaving it open-ended for them to know that there's a relationship there if they need any support in the future. Let's say they really need to hire someone in marketing, and then they think, wait, this student knew that we needed support in marketing and they would above and beyond. So just be thoughtful with it. And then lastly, just avoid really general statements in these emails. Insert something that recalls specific bits of the conversation, just like in this example. And then finally, just in conclusion, I really want to kind of reiterate the benefits of informational interviews. It's a way to tap into that hidden job market. You might be able to discover jobs that aren't yet posted on the market. And that is honestly, that's solid gold when it comes to networking. That gives you that insider track for jobs that you might not even know are out there yet. It's also a way to push beyond a typical job search. Now, the normal job search might entail a lot more cold calling things and things where you don't have a personal connection. This might add a whole nother layer of support and networking by creating these personal relationships and connections. So it's more of a personalized way of networking. And finally, by planning, conducting, and following up on informational interviews, as we discussed, you can just gain valuable perspectives to figure out your plot of your own career path. It's a way to see if something fits your skills or fits your experiences or fits your interests. So it's honestly a great opportunity as a student. And so I wanted to just drop our contact info. I know I did this last week, but if you need an appointment for more support, let's say you want to figure out how to do that elevator pitch speech, or you need help with your LinkedIn, anything related to how would I connect for informational interviewing, you can set up an appointment with us by emailing career.services@fresno.edu. And then also Estella is our traditional undergrad student career counselor. And so there's another contact point if you need someone personal to talk to. And then I just want to say thank you so much for your time. I know it's a lot in your busy schedule, so thanks for just listening so well. And don't forget our website there, informational interviewing, if you need more support. So I'll go ahead and open it up for any questions. I'm ready. So hit me up. I'm ready.
Well, if we don't have questions at this moment, I'd love to ask a question to the class. Can you raise your hand visually or with the emojis if you've ever conducted an informational interview previously? All right, Corey. I can do a thumbs up too. So it looks like then for everybody who's attending class today that this is a first time opportunity to do an informational interview. So now is a great time to ask questions. Also, as you look through the directions for the assignment, which you may or may not have taken a peek at prior to our class today, you may have other questions that pop up or concerns about who to reach out to and develop a contact with to do this assignment. This is a 1-week assignment. It is due on Sunday, so we are expecting that you're going to jump right into it, find somebody, send out that invite, and do an interview in a fairly short amount of time. But using all the guidance that Corey provided, I am absolutely confident that you will have a yes response from whomever you ask. I've actually never seen anybody get turned down for an informational interview, and that's in 13 years of supporting students and job seekers of many kinds and pursuing them. So I'm 100% confident that you'll have success in finding contacts. But while we have some time, does anybody have any questions that come to mind? Or concerns or emotional outbursts?
Well, I'll even expand on what you just said, Rose. When I was in grad school for my assistantship in career counseling, we had a team of, it was 3 to 5 grad assistants working in career counseling, and we wanted to be up to date on, for all of the different majors and fields, what was the latest information so we could be able to support students on the steps that they need to go into that field. So we did informational interviews every single week. And so we took turns reaching out. I mean, really, most of it was cold messages on LinkedIn for every single industry, really, in a whole year. And so for that schedule, it was every 3 to 5 weeks. I was conducting a new informational interview and then presenting on it. I never got a no on anything. So like everyone was very open in every single field. And so just to kind of take away that fear, it's a very common practice and thing for you to do as a student.
Corey, we did have a request in the chat. If you wouldn't mind, can you pull that link that you had shared earlier in the presentation and throw it in the chat so folks can copy and paste? And then we did have a question in the chat also about what to do if somebody did say no. Again, I've never seen anybody say no, but if it did happen, we can help you find a new contact. Speaking of support, we do actually have a list within our Career Center of alumni and employer partners who have previously expressed willingness to do informational interviews with students. So if you are at a loss of who to ask, or if you not sure what direction to go in, please do reach out. I can pull from that list and provide some introductions. I'm also happy to reach out to folks that might be new contacts and do some exploration and introductions on your behalf. So this is something that we literally do all the time, and it's very comfortable for us. So if it's something that's not as comfortable for you, then please leverage us in the Career Center as far as bridging that gap, finding a contact, and doing some initial outreach. Thanks for throwing that link in there, Corey. So I have another question then for the class. I'd love to hear from you. Who might be an ideal target contact for the kind of informational interview that would be most useful for you? Is there a type of professional or career field where you would like to tap someone's expertise for this assignment?
For me, I know with history, I would probably talk to Marshall Johnston.
Was that Christian?
Yes.
Okay, and I'm sorry, my volume for you is just super low. Would you mind repeating that?
It said, I know, I'm guessing if I'm going to interview anyone, for me, it'd probably be like Marshall Johnston, or just someone I know that's a teacher, because that's like my field I'm going into.
Okay. Oh my goodness, I'm so glad you mentioned that, Christian. Your professors are an excellent resource and source of expertise for informational interviews. So they do these all the time too. Marshall Johnston would have a wealth of information to share with you. I'm sure I'm going to speak on his behalf and say he'd probably be very happy to do that with you. So great source of contact, Christian. Who else? What would represent an ideal target for you? All right. Well, It's crickets. Since we have a quiet class today, I'm going to assume that you all have some great ideas on who you'd like to reach out to, and that you will reach out if you have any other questions that pop up. There have been a few notes in the chat box, so thank you for sharing those. And I'm excited to see that you have, Jeanette, some prospects for school psychologist and Hannah for law enforcement. Again, if you need anything, please leverage our Career Center and our alumni network. And many thanks to Corrie for sharing all this information with our class today.
Thanks for having me. It was so fun again. And I'm just cheering you guys on, even virtually right now.